You will fail at property investment unless you watch this video. I'm being a bit dramatic, but so many people come to me, and I've trained students now for probably about 3 years, and I've seen a commonality in why people fail. And a really big reason is something called the magpie effect. Shiny penny syndrome. Should I do this strategy? Should I do this one? What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And because they move from one to the other without too much strategic thought behind it, they end up sort of going through that inertia stage, getting to that turning point and going, put too long, I'm going to start again. And so there are so many ways to make money, and I'm going to tell you they all work. But the problem with that is, well, if they all work, what one should I do? Now, what I'm going to be breaking down in this video is my 5 key strategies that I love and I'd like to advise and guide you on how you can make £3,000 or more through time, grit, and determination. Let's jump straight in. Strategy versus tactics. People get confused about this, and I really just want to break it down, the difference between a property strategy and a property tactic. Okay, people say to me all the time, yeah, my strategy is lease options. My strategy is rent to rent. No, it's not. They are not strategies, they are tactics, okay? A lease option, you could do a buy-to-let lease option. You could do a HMO lease option. You could do a serviced accommodation lease option. You could do a land development on, you guessed it, a lease option. So what I'm going to be talking through today are strategies, okay? Actual buy-to-let, HMO, service accommodation strategies, property strategies that make you money. And I'll talk about tactics around it, but you can work that out on your own, and you can watch some of the other videos, okay? So just understand strategy versus tactics. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to just draw up this graph here, where we've got money on one side and we've got risk on the other. Now, risk can come in a few different elements. It could be time risk, it could be financial risk, it could be whatever you want, okay? But just have a think how we're going through. And I'm going to give my top 5 and give some guidance on how I train this and how I would go through it. The key is to map this out. And I like process of elimination. So elimination often comes from your time, your money, your experience that comes into this. So let's kind of start with the residual or passive parts of property investment. So you've got good old, if you've watched my videos, you know what I'm going straight in with. Buy-to-let property. It is boring and vanilla, and I friggin' love them. Okay, if I can marry a property, don't know why I said that, because that's just weird, but it would be a buy-to-let. I love the big, boring, stupid stuff. Okay, there it is. So, buy-to-let property, you're talking £250-ish, your average property per calendar month, net, before tax. Okay, so net of mortgage, net of your cost, that's what you're gonna end up looking at. The reason I love buy-to-lets is they are set and forget investments, i.e. you put your money into it, you do your refurb, you give it to a letting agent, and you can leave it alone. Now, does that mean every tenant's going to pay? No. Does it mean that nobody's going to trash the property? No. There may be some issues with it, but in general, as property investments go, you're going to be okay. Okay? That is relatively low risk, but it's also lowest return, lowest reward on that. But it is passive, okay? And all of the blue is going to be in passive. The next one, stepping up a little bit, over here is an HMO. House of multiple occupancy. A HMO is when 3 or more unrelated parties are renting the same properties. That is when it is technically classed as a multi-let. Not all HMOs need to be licensed, by the way, but this isn't the video for it. Now, the thing with HMOs to understand is it is 100% higher risk. Okay, there's 5 sets of tenants, 5 sets of issues that can go wrong, 5 sets of people that can trash the house, 5 people that could not pay you, and etc. In some ways, it is reduced risk as well, because you can't go with a buy-to-let. You can go from 100% occupancy to 0% occupancy overnight. Very unlikely. But with the returns, the reward, the money, it's also typically higher as well. Now, I have people coming to me all the time going, hey Jamie, I want to buy an HMO with 50 grand in. I'm going to refinance, get all of my money out on a commercial valuation, and I'm going to make £1,000 a month net off of that. This trainer that I did this training with told me this is going to be possible. Well, I am sorry to be the one to hit you with this. Is not in all areas, but a majority of the areas that HMOs that we look at, it just ain't happening. All right, you're more than likely going to be leaving in 40 to 50 grand. Commercial valuations are so much harder to get. A lot of them are doing it on bricks and mortar, especially with the big C-bomb that's been knocked around the last couple of years. People are nervous about them. I think a much more realistic long-term net return is going to be looking at about £500 a month. Okay, still not too shabby and 100% up from the old BTLs over there that I love so dearly. Moving on, the next is serviced accommodation, SA baby. Again with this you hear some real figures thrown about, 1,500 a month. I've just got £18,000 booking. It's like, yeah, but you didn't tell them about the £19,000 of costs, not to mention the time that you've put into it. So SA are really good. I do like SA, and I know people making significant amounts of money. I think, again, long-term realistic returns that we're going to be looking at on this bad boy is about £750. Service accommodations at £750 is a lot more realistic. Here's the risk with service accommodation that I see. So, and I'm going to tell it how it is. First of all, people renting your property without knowing who you are. Quite common are ladies of the night and men of the night, I guess, but prostitutes booking in, which can be an issue. Typically, they're actually great, look after the property quite well, but if it's in a block of flats, could be an issue. The biggest issue I find is people trashing the property. And people, you know, when you're doing a service accommodation, not so much the holiday lets, but I mean in like central locations where people are just having parties there, trashing it, builders going in, leaving cigarette burns in the mattresses and stuff like that. Like, I've seen some pretty bad stuff. And then the problem with that is, can cause £5,000 to £10,000 worth of damage, replacing the TVs, cutlery getting nicked. It's kind of ridiculous. So, can you make loads of money from SA? Abso-friggin-lutely. Is it higher risk? Yes. And time input? Yes. Okay. But these are your more residual, if you like, these ones here. And the reason I'm using residual rather than passive income is there such thing as fully passive income? Yes and no. Now on this side, a lot more passive, i.e. set and forget. At this time, more involved. So for example, service accommodation, unless you get a shit hot agent, which in my experience is very difficult, you will be managing that yourself. So just be aware that this is a lot less passive than you think until you start employing people, which when you've got a business, right? But in terms of an investment, I think service accommodation honestly shouldn't be called a property investment. I just don't think so, unless you've got great management in your area, which, as I said, is rare. I think it's more logical to say it's a property business. It's active income, okay? I would argue that for a majority of people, service accommodation is more active than passive, whereas HMOs and certainly buy-to-lets are a lot more passive than active. So here's where it really takes a divide, because can you earn buy-to-let £3 a month? Yes. Yes, you can. You're going to need 12 of them. What you need to realize is each one of those, on average, in my experience, is going to end up costing about 40 grand. Now, you can refinance as you're going through, but let's just say straight on this, you're probably going to be in, let's say you are getting something back, let's say it's 30, I'd probably expect around 360,000 to get you that. I think with the HMOs, in order, obviously for that, you're going to need 6. And you're probably going to need probably about 50, 60 grand. Let's go to the lower end of it just to be nice. Let's say there's 50 grand, 300k. So it is less money in there. And in the service accommodation, obviously you're going to need 4. and this will depend on whether you're purchasing or not. We'll assume a purchase with this, because obviously if you can do a rent to rent, you can do rent to rents on all of those, or if you're going to do a lease option, you can do it on all of those. Let's assume a purchase. What a lot of people don't think about with purchase to SA, which by the way is a massively untapped market, is the lack of lenders there, probably because it's an untapped market. So there are minimum purchase criteria, i.e. you cannot buy an 80 grand property with serviced accommodation mortgage lending. You just can't. Last I checked it was 125 grand, but it was going up. There might be access more over time, but again, to get those, you're probably looking all in, because you'd have to higher spec than normal and the full furnishings, probably about 50, 60k per property. We'll go 50 again, 200,000. Well, Jamie, if these are your investments and residual income, surely that points out that SA is the best, HMO second, buy-to-let third. Maybe. Just because I'm in love with buy-to-lets doesn't mean you should be too. But I actually value my time more than money, believe it or not. So this is a huge amount of time, and I don't want another job doing this, and I don't really have much interest in SA business. HMOs, I'm not against HMOs, to be honest, if I've got a really great one, but it's just the management time. And again, I've never found a great HMO manager, to be honest, over the long term. And for the sake of 300 versus 360, I like the minimum hassle of a buy-to-let. The other thing is over time capital growth prospects. Capital growth prospects for a buy-to-let over time, I think, is considerably higher than the others, okay? Because service accommodation, you can get on something called a cap rate, capitalization rate, which is commercial. HMOs, you can get commercial, but it's a lot bloody harder nowadays. You need to talk to somebody really experienced. And buy-to-let is obviously on the bricks and mortar. And bricks and mortar valuations tend to go up, whereas people tend to pay premiums for HMOs and SA, i.e. a lot of people are purchasing above the bricks and mortar valuation of property. That is scary for me, because not so much for HMOs, but for service accommodation, if the regulation changes, if the hotels out there put too much pressure on the government, which they do from time to time, and the government says, right, we're banning this. Think about Airbnb. You can only do 90 days worth of booking in London. It's coming into Manchester and Leeds. And so it's putting more and more pressure on that, where you might be left with a property that actually isn't that good. So my recommendation, I'm not saying don't do it, but my recommendation for service accommodation is, if you do it, work out the numbers on a buy-to-let. Does it work as a buy-to-let? And if it does, great, take the risk. So here's what gets really exciting about property. People get obsessed with residual income. I'm pretty obsessed with active income. I don't really understand where this whole, like, if I want to retire early, it's like, do you really want to retire early? Like, can you fathom like how boring it is fully retiring? Oh, I travel the world, I'll never get bored. I'm telling you, you will get bored. I've traveled quite a lot. Dan, my business partner, traveled quite a lot. It gets to a point where you've got too much of one thing, it all gets boring. So I genuinely feel people need an active measure, and this is where the others come in. Number one, flips. So I am a big fan of flips. A flip is where you purchase, you refurbish and sell on the property. Average income from that is around £18,000 from our averages. And that means in order to get 3k a month, you need to do 2 flips a year. Now, considering that's active income, consider you're not going to be there bloody laying the bricks and plastering, are you? You get a team together. So I genuinely think that is much easier, and this is the thing that you'll find with active income. You can make so much more money with, in my opinion, relatively little effort in order to get that. And then that 18 grand, you need 2 of them for every 12 buy-to-lets, 6 HMOs and 4 serviced accommodation. I'm a massive fan of active income. So you've got that, and I would say that sits around here. So more risk than a buy-to-let, but less than the HMO. Then what you've got is deal packaging, which I am massively biased in this. I run a deal packaging company. We did 140 grand last month, so over 140, sorry. So we're pretty big into this. whilst I'm on that little seed for this, I also do deal packaging training. So if you're interested, put education in the comments and we'll be in touch. But I am massively biased for obvious reasons. But deal packaging is kind of less money, but the least risk. So I'm going to put DP there. Each one gets you around £5,000. So again, if you think about that, if you're going to get 5k per property, you need 36 grand a year in order to quit your job or reach the criteria of 3 grand a month, right? Which is, what is that? 7 or 8. 7 gets you 35 grand. Let's call it 8 over there. The reason I really love deal packaging is the fact that it's zero risk. I don't need experience. I don't need any of my own money. I don't need a good credit history. So I don't need anything like that. It uses other people's money and you're matchmaking in between. So there are 5 options for you. I think they are the best 5 to get started with. Especially if in your first couple of years, you're in that first couple of years where you're learning, you want to earn, you don't have all the time in the world to dedicate to this because you're probably in a job right now as well, right? For me, I would do it in this order. Number 1 would be deal packaging. Caveat to that, I am massively biased. I'm obsessed with it. It's what's built up my property portfolio. It's what's made me all the money. So I am going to be, and I educate people. So obviously I've got a vested interest in that. But I genuinely love it because I don't need money. I don't need loads of experience. I don't need any credit checks. It's very quick. Bear in mind it's property. It's not get rich quick, but it's the quickest way of making money in property, in my opinion, and the low entry. Next, I love flips, and it's what I did a lot of to earn money. So I then save up the money from deal packaging and I put it into another active stream. Like I said, I'm not scared of a bit of graft and hard work. Hopefully you're watching this because you're not scared either, right? You're not obsessed with just passive income. But here's where it gets exciting. As I do more and more and more of these, I have more and more money to invest. So all of my time and energy goes into deal packaging and flips, deal packaging and flips, deal packaging and flips. And then guess what happens to the money? You guessed it, I don't spend a bloody penny of it. And it all goes into my boring, vanilla, beautiful buy-to-let properties. Okay, and then what happens over time is I'm going to spend the money coming into that. Now, what's really exciting about this is all I aim to do, and honestly, I will never, ever, 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 ever go different from this strategy. I just get bigger and bigger. So deal packaging, I want to get to $250,000 a month by the end of next year. By year 2, so the end of 2023, I want to be hitting £500,000 months. I am not going to touch a penny of it. It's just going to go straight into your bread and butter, boring vanilla buy-to-lets. But the difference is my flips are now becoming new builds. So I'm now buying plots of land. I'm now buying what's called donor houses, where a house with a bit of land next to it, and buying those. And my buy-to-lets more and more are becoming blocks of flats. And maybe some commercial conversions in there. But can you see how I love keeping things boring and simple? A new build is really not complex, especially when you take out the risk of the fact you own an asset with it. And a block of flats, it's still a buy-to-let, just the numbers are a lot bigger. So this is where it gets a bit more exciting, because once you quit your job, if you like, you want to do 30 to 50 grand, which is great. Once you've kind of got that and you can build up the money more and more from deal packaging and flips, a block of flats might be a load more money, but it's still a buy-to-let. It's still refurbing it. It's the same stuff. The only difference is that one purchase can pay you £50,000 to £100,000 every single year. And then what happens is your money, that was a terrible pound sign, makes more money, and it just keeps going and growing and growing and going on and on and on and on and on and on. So look, that's just my opinion. I think there are a lot of strategies out there. Remember, I'm not covering tactics, rent to rent, lease options. They are tactics, not strategies. And these, in my opinion, are the best 5 to be looking at. Again, I'm massively biased, but for me, I would do deal packaging, flips, buy-to-let. That is it, and I would do more and more and more and more. And then once I'm making money, I'd spend money on marketing. And guess where my marketing's going? To finding more vendors that want to sell me be properties and I would deal package them up. The ones that were really good, I'll do as flips, and then I'm going to put all of the money into buy-to-lets. But this is about you, not about me. That's just my opinion. What I would love to find out more is about you, because let's face it, I'm making these videos for you, my subscriber, right? So let me know right now what you thought of the video. What 3 strategies are you gonna do in property? Are you gonna do deal packaging? Are you gonna do buy-to-lets? Are you gonna do service accommodation? And why? I'd love to know your reasoning. What's your position? How many are you looking for? What results are you gonna get? Let me know in the comments below. And if you got value from this video, smash the like button ever so lightly, and whilst you're at it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.